everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex, and this is Big Baby Reviews. Check out my comics, Big Baby and STARCRASHER at KINGCOMICS.CA. Today, guys, Eric Larson Day, we're taking a look at the next issue of The Defenders from the early 2000s. This is number 6 from August 2001. And the most interesting kind of aspect in this issue as far as the art goes is the fact that once again we have a different inker on top of Eric Larson. So we've seen him inked by Klaus Janson for the first few issues. Then we had last issue with Sal Buscema, and now we've got Al Gordon inking him, who I usually associate more with Jerry Ordway, right? Who worked with him on the Superman stuff from the late 80s, early 90s, and also on Wildstar, which at some point I'll review as well, because I always kind of have a fond memory of Wildstar, that miniseries. So I'll get to it at some point. But yeah, so always interesting to see different kind of artistic takes on top of Eric Larson. And I've said this before, no matter, which inker you put on top of Larson, it's really hard to kind of destroy his basic style and look. So no matter what, it always looks like Larson. Here though, with Gordon, as I go through the issue, I'll try to point out some of the differences that I see from the other inkers. I definitely feel like he's got a much cleaner style, and I see some, specific type of hatching here on the chest and stuff that I see him doing on the Superman comics on top of Jerry Ordway. So that's kind of the stuff, the telltale signs, the hatching on the muscles and stuff that to me scream Al Gordon. Even though the structure is very Larson, there's little hints of his personal style in there as well. This cover, pretty cool. I think it's somewhat of an homage, not directly exactly, but of a Thor cover from back in the day where Thor's kind of being pushed off this rock floating over, I'm going to assume it's New York City. It usually always is. And that back in the day, that cover was deemed uninkable because there's so much detail, and that Coletta unfortunately had blacked out a lot of the detail of the city underneath in the background. Thankfully, that cover has been reproduced in the Kirby Collector. You can check it out from just the straight pencils. And Larson himself has re-inked it, I guess, for fun. And he's posted that on his Facebook page or on a Jack Kirby group page that he is the moderator of. So you can go online and check that out as well. But I definitely feel like this cover homages that for sure. The kind of floating chunk of rock over top of the city. And again, Thor on that original Kirby cover is falling off. Here we've got Hulk falling off. Let's crack her open, have a look inside. By Beast, I don't know how interesting he is as a character, but I do really kind of like this drawing here. Kind of an interesting, somewhat, it's not a Larson character, but I think Larson is well suited for that type of character. And, he's got a character in Savage Dragon that basically has, this same kind of thing where the head, there's a head on top of a head. I forget his name, but I feel like maybe he got the inspiration from By Beast here. So again, when it comes to the hatching and stuff on top, still very indicative of the Larson style, but I feel like it gets smoothed over and cleaned up a little bit with Al Gordon's inks. And what you see here, we're going to see throughout the issue, a nice, bold, clean, thick line over the contours of everything, and then some fine hatching on the inside, kind of defining the volume. And he's doing the good old Jack Kirby thing of splash page, double page splash. When you look at this, how can you not feel that this is Kirby inspired? I've talked about the series ad nauseum as I go through each issue, that I definitely feel like this is kind of a love letter to Jack Kirby and 60s style Marvel comics, which is fun. Again, this is definitely a good example of that. You see more of that fine hatching on the musculature with that clean, thick line all the way around the contour. Looks great, very Kirby-esque in the action here, and the effects of the Hulk's blow looks really good. And I'll just talk about the color real quick. I think they do a really good job here of using computer coloring and not going overboard, still maintaining a bit of that vintage feel from the 60s that we got with the flat colors in Marvel Comics. And then we get to some sections like this where nothing against the art, looks great, but Kurt Busiek is co-writing with Eric Larson. I feel like they're probably kind of developing, the plot together, but the dialogue is probably mostly Kurt Busiek. I could be wrong on that, but I definitely feel that that's what's going on here, because these pages are very, very wordy, and kind of annoyingly so. So, these are the kind of pages that don't really make me want to read this comic. So I'm kind of disappointed by this, not art-wise, but story-wise, writing-wise. And also the fact that, all the main players of the Defenders are pretty big Marvel kind of first, maybe second line characters, but, everyone else, they're kind of D-listers. And it kind of takes away my interest for the series. Again, the art is great. All these shots The action with the Hulk, you know, fighting the Bi-Beast, all of that looks great. The foreshortening. But then you get introduced to characters like, you know, the Red Raven, who I think is kind of an updated version of a Golden Age character. But, you know, outside of this comic, I don't think I've ever read any of the Adventures of Red Raven, nor am I interested in doing so. So I feel here, I could be wrong, but there's a slight Flash Gordon inspiration behind this image. If you've ever seen that movie, I think it's late 70s or early 80s, like maybe like right in 1980 when it was produced or made or released. That Flash Gordon movie, you know, I remember seeing it. It was when I was a kid living in Victoria, British Columbia. There was an American channel that would play movies. I think it was every Friday night and Saturday afternoon. There were specific times, and you know, I was able to see a lot of classic movies, you know, that you couldn't see anywhere else, or you know, that I hadn't necessarily rented out at the video store. This was an easier way to see those movies without having to go out and pay, basically, as a kid, right? And Flash Gordon was, you know, I remember watching that movie and going, man, this is so weird and out there and so different, right? And it was kind of kitschy and stuff. And I didn't really know if I liked it or not. But as I've grown older, I've watched it again a few times. And there's a quality to that movie that's just really fun. I don't know how else to describe it. Very surrealist. I like the 70s, late 70s, you know, vibe to the designs and the characters and stuff. And I feel like maybe Larsen is, you know, a fan of that movie as well. I don't know for sure. I know Alex Ross is. He's talked about it a lot, how it's basically, I think it's his favorite movie. But you know, you've got the Birdmen or the Airmen, I forget what they're called in the movie. This just feels very similar to a scene in that movie in Flash Gordon. So check out that movie if you haven't. Just aesthetically, it's very kind of fun and different. And you know, like I said, originally I don't know if I liked it, but more and more I know that I do. This is a good series. Richard Corbin drawn and Azzarello is writing, I think. Yeah, exactly. I'll be reviewing that at some point because that's a really good kind of take on the Hulk. It's not literally out of continuity, but kind of a what if Elseworlds kind of deal. Larsen being smart, statted, which means, you know, recopying the same image a few times. Yeah, and like this is what I mean with the second stringers. You know, they're working in the two versions of the Defenders team, right? With the more known characters, Silver Surfer, Doctor Strange, Hulk, and who's the other guy that I'm missing right now? Anyways, Namor, there he is. And then the second, almost third stringers with Valkyrie, Hellcat, and I think his name is Nighthawk. Keep forgetting. Yeah, just these characters don't interest me at all. I think, you know, having the Namor, Strange, Hulk, Silver Surfer team more in the forefront works better than having these characters involved in the story. And once again, some great art here, even though the characters I'm not that interested in. But all this dialogue here on this page just really doesn't make me want to read this. Maybe I'd be more interested if I was more interested in the characters as well. But yeah, just very wordy. And I feel like the art is almost dropping off just a little bit as we move through the issue. So Al Gordon, maybe, you know, pressed for a deadline. And as we move forward, the art is not quite as clean as it was early on. It doesn't quite have that clean sheen that he was giving it. And it's looking more and more like Erik Larsen art, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I like that rougher hewn kind of inking that Larsen does. But, you know, if you showed me this, I could definitely believe that Larsen inked this and not Al Gordon, right? Some of the lines are a little kind of broken up and a little wobblier and stuff. So I don't know exactly if that's a deadline issue, but the foreshortening on this is kind of funny, right? I always like these really extreme foreshortened things, very indicative of the Kirby style and also something that Larsen's mastered and does well. Like it's almost too exaggerated, but I like it. Almost like, you know, if you look at early Barry Windsor Smith when he was starting out at Marvel and he was doing definitely a Kirby clone style, but it was almost even more kind of distorted and warped than what Kirby was doing. It's kind of fun. But yeah, when Larsen's doing these big shots here, man, he really excels. Hulk punching Doctor Strange, I don't think that's going to go well, you know. I don't think Doctor Strange is necessarily physically prepared to get punched by the Hulk, but of course he's got the mystic powers, so I assume he's probably been using some of these. I don't think he died here. He's been using some of these to shield himself from the punches coming from the Hulk. The shot of Namor surprised, another example of, Larsen's got, I would say, a more cartoony style than realistic style, but I find the cartooniness and the expression here really works well. This one is kind of almost ridiculous and funny. They all look quite shocked and surprised. But yeah, again, other than the inking and, the Larsen artwork, there's not much more I really want to talk about story-wise about this one. Another page with great art, but just way too much text and dialogue. And here's another shot that I feel is like very inspired. It almost looks like that shot when the Avengers are looking over once they've discovered Captain America's body, and he's laid out and they're kind of looming over him. I feel like this is definitely a very kind of Jack Kirby 60s inspired composition with all these characters here. And of course, I guess it seems like Doctor Strange is kind of out and maybe didn't have the chance to use any of his magic powers here to protect himself from the Hulk. But, is he going to be all right? He'll live. So there you go. Love this stuff, this clever stuff where, the foreshortening is so extreme that the hand goes out of the panel. I think that works really well. Creates a great sense of dynamics and just what is other than that kind of figure, a very simple panel. Looks great. And yeah, that's about it for this issue that I really want to talk about. I remember this shot once again of everyone in action. Looks really cool. I like kind of the crooked lines he's using for the Hulk's mouth here. A little bit Kirby inspired there as well. And I've talked about how when other people ink an artist, you can kind of see more of their personal style or the difference in their style when characters are more in the background and smaller. So with Doctor Strange and Valkyrie here, I feel like these look a little less Larsen-y, if I can use that as a word, right? I mean, there's a lot going on here, storytelling-wise, too. Larsen definitely breaks it down more like, not quite a traditional Marvel comic, but it's not an imaged style layout at all. It's definitely more restrained and more kind of traditional, and just a lot of panels per page as well, right? These 2 pages here, good example of that. And again, just the insane amount of text and dialogue here that you got to read through. And other than that, just the last splash page, I think of this kind of explosion going on here on top of this floating island. Looks pretty cool, very surrealist, right? And fracachum is the sound effect here. Kind of an interesting choice there. I've talked about this before. I'm paying more attention to sound effects in books and how sometimes they're, very kind of literal and work really well. Pow, tick, 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 those kinds of things. But then there's some where like throck for a punch. I've never really understood why throck would be the sound of a punch. And fracachum, chum is, boom, I guess, would be what people would typically use. But chum, I guess, evokes an explosion to me. I could be convinced to accept that, as at the same level as a boom. And this I thought was just kind of stupid to be Hulkinued, like continued. Obviously, it's just a really bad pun that didn't need to be there. All right, well, there you go, guys. That is my quick, sweet and short review of The Defenders issue number 6. Looking at some Erik Larsen art inked by Al Gordon on this one. Hopefully the next issues get a little bit more exciting. I mean, I'm still enjoying the art, and I hope maybe we get another kind of series of different inkers so we can talk about the differences between them all over top of an artist like Erik Larsen. But story-wise, not really interesting to me. Lots to read, way too much dialogue, and a lot of second, third rate kind of characters, which maybe leads, I don't know how long the series continued on after Larsen. I've got up to issue 12 because that's where he ends his run, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if it continued past this. I'll have to look into that and find out. There you go, guys. We are done with it. So thank you so much, those of you who are out there watching and subscribed to the channel. I really do appreciate your support. If you're watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It really helps the channel out, helps us grow, helps get us out there to other people just like us who are into comic books. So thanks again for watching today, guys, and have yourselves an awesome day. King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents STARCRASHER one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.
fight.